Hello, you're listening to Mike Madden on the Art Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with authors, musicians, artists and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are taken direct from the Art Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. This show travels halfway around the world to talk to Australian author EJ Dawson. She talks about her upcoming novel Behind the Veil and shares lots of insights for the writing community. The show was originally broadcast on Expat Radio on Monday the 18th of March 2019. Due to licensing restrictions, we were unable to play the songs from the original broadcast. Good evening, Dave. How's it over there?
Good evening, sir. It's blowing a gale, freezing cold. Apart from that, it's lovely. But I'm going to have to get dressed very soon.
I should hope so. Good evening, everybody. This is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio, and my next guest is going to make us all very jealous because she's over in Australia. Good evening, EJ Dawson.
Good morning over here. How are you?
Probably a lot colder than you are. Go on, tell us what the temperature is over there.
Oh, the temperature. The temperature is a very balmy. I'm just opening my phone. What have we got here this morning? 16 degrees apparently. Quite nice. It's going to warm up later in the week, but Australian warm weather isn't as much as you'd think. I woke up this morning, was all ready for my interview, very excited, put on my dressing gown and found 3 ginormous black spiders crawling up my body. I have had a hell of a morning.
Well, that's why we live in the UK. Well, Dave's in France, but they don't get poisonous spiders over there either, I don't think.
They call that foreplay in France.
Moving swiftly on. So, EJ, you've got a novel coming out later this year called Behind the Veil, and you were kind enough to send me the picture of the cover, which looks fantastic. And it's got the strapline on it, "To catch a killer or save her sanity," in the category of Gothic Noir. So just tell our listeners a little bit about it and where you're at with your publishing journey.
I'm terribly excited about this story. I actually started my writing journey with a massive, cumbersome series, a 21 long fantasy novella series, which was my baby, and it was everything, and it's just too much of a big thing. And I put it down at the start of the year, and I thought I'm going to do something completely different. And Behind the Veil is a story about a young woman who can read the veil between life and death. But because of something that's happened to her when she discovered this ability, she's quite frightened of it and tries to hide it a little. But when a man comes to her for help, she has to choose between whether or not she revisits those terrible memories or she saves a young woman's life.
Right. So, when can we expect to get that out onto the bookshelves or the Kindle shelves? I'm not sure if you call them Kindle shelves.
Kindle shelves works. I like it. I'm hoping to have this one. It's actually currently sitting with an agent, and I got a full request the other day, which was very exciting. But I am so excited by this book that I've already sort of put background plans into place to self-publish it, because I've had so much positive feedback from all my initial beta readers that I just can't wait to get this story out.
It's very interesting you should mention that, because I know you were involved in the PitMad initiative. Is that where you got your agent inquiry from?
Yes, no, I was very excited to participate in that. I actually have to confess I wasn't ready for it, not remotely. But my beta reader came back to me and said, "You're pitting this, right?" And I said to her, "Look, I just wanted you to check the ending to make sure it wasn't too gory." And she said to me, No, you need to pit this with me. And I went, "Oh, okay." So I hastily put something together, and then I was very flattered and surprised when 2 agents actually liked the tweet on my very first run. It was my very first pitch. It was my very first tweet of the day, because you're allowed to tweet 3 times. And yeah, 2 agents have looked at it, and one of them's asked me for a full request. So I'm finding this process quite exciting.
I guess it could be quite stressful as well, because you'll have made a huge amount of effort into getting it to where it is today, certainly in terms of getting the cover, if you've gone that far. And if it gets picked up by an agent and a publisher, I wouldn't say all that'd be wasted, but it's going to change significantly.
Oh, absolutely. But I also think that it's it's such a changing industry. It's so flexible. And I think one of the things that sort of having self-publishing as a background opportunity allows me to sort of say, well, I can work on this story, I can get it out there. And if the agent doesn't like it, then that still leaves this option open for me, because I haven't actually, I've got the cover. And there's also the potential that provided the agent likes the cover or the publisher likes the cover, they can always pick it up. There's a lot of flexibility and fluidity in making books that are designed just to be ebooks. And this book, and I'm quite pleased to say, make a comment from a recent beta reader, is such a page turner that I feel really confident that it's going to be picked up, if not by a publisher, then definitely by readers.
Well, we wish you all the best with that one, but that's not all that you've got coming out this year. You've got a sci-fi romance trilogy out in, hoping to get out in October. So is that one ready to go, or might that one be pitched to agents as well?
No, that one's going by itself. Agents love standalone books, which is fine and well and good. And when I've been doing this for the last 5 years. I've been self-publishing for the last 5 years. This is the first time, Behind the Veil is the first time I felt I had a standalone that was strong enough to pitch. But this sci-fi trilogy that I'm writing is, while the trilogy is whole and concise, it's part of other stories that I'm actually currently writing. It's done. There's a few minor tweaks that I need to do before it goes to beta readers in regards to fixing a few plot elements, but we're in March and that's not due out until October. So I'm feeling quite confident about releasing that one.
Right. Now, as we mentioned, you're in Australia and you grew up in Canberra. This sounds a bit dangerous, but over a disused mine and next to a forest. And when I think of disused mines, I always think of Scooby-Doo stories. So is that, do you get inspiration from your surroundings, from a disused mine and a forest and all that kind of thing?
I have to confess, living on that property has probably instilled on me a really great sense of imagination. I remember one time standing on the mine and there was a full moon in the sky, and one of our neighbours actually owned huskies and they loved to howl at the moon. Great big abandoned mine, giant pine forest, huge old creepy house, and wolves howling at the moon. I mean, I've always tried to write creepy stuff, but I think I was definitely inspired by where I grew up.
It's almost right in itself, that, isn't it? That imagery.
Oh yeah, at the time I was 8 and it was terrifying, but yes.
Yeah, well, 8-year-old, but. Coming back to you toyed with the idea of doing lots of other things apart from being a writer, and you know, I've seen that you considered being a vet, a biologist, a meteorologist, an archaeologist, and went on to do a double degree in history and archaeology. But you still had a thirst for writing, which is interesting that you managed to find time to fit in a creative writing course while you were still at university. How has that impacted your writing, the creative writing course?
I felt like what I needed to do, I was keeping in touch with the side of me that wasn't getting enough attention, and I started to use it to write a series of paranormal romance, because back then that was just what was trending. It was pre-Twilight days, and it was all starting to get quite a lot of traction, and I ended up putting it to the side because for a long time I really didn't feel like that was the right story in me that needed to get out there. I think a lot of writers find that they start with one book and it's supposed to be everything that they need to get out there. When reality is, I think that for a lot of writers, it's deeply intuitive what the story is that you need to get out there. It's the same feeling I have with my last prophecy series, even though it's currently on a little hiatus. It's the same feeling I have with Behind the Veil, and it really helped me prompt to sort of keep at it even until I found the right story.
I'm glad you mentioned The Last Prophecy, because I know it's on a hiatus, but that's been described as a cross between The Mummy and Star Trek, and I'm a big fan of both of those, so I really do hope it comes off its hiatus eventually. But earlier on you mentioned the Pit Mad tweets that you put out. Just explain to our listeners what Pit Mad is all about and how you got involved in it.
So Pit Mad is an opportunity. It's run by the Pitch Wars handle on Twitter, and it's an opportunity to It's an opportunity for writers such as myself to pitch an unscripted manuscript, an unpublished manuscript to agents and editors. It's usually given a comp title, which is where you say what it's crossed with. So you might add two different kinds of books that have come out relatively recently. So I crossed mine with an older book, The Woman in Black and The Lovely Bones. And then I had a byline for the book, a very, very short description, because you've only got 280 characters, and then you have all the necessary hashtags. Now, the idea here is surprisingly not to like the tweet, but to retweet it and try to get as much coverage as possible. And if an agent or editor likes the tweet, it's an invitation to go to their submissions page and query your book with them. So it's a great opportunity for writers who might not have been noticed elsewhere or not pitched to the right agent to get a chance to talk to somebody who's interested in exactly what they're writing about. And there's a lot of little hashtags you put down the bottom to help guide the agents into what it is your story's about.
I think it's a great idea, and it's kind of an opportunity to blast out your pitch to a number of agents all at the same time. So we're going to go for a break with Ed Sheeran and Master Blaster.
Going back live to Mike this evening, and our special guest down in Australia. Voila!
Are we back on?
We're back with you live, lad.
Hi, good evening or good morning, depends where you are. But this is Mike Madden on the Art Show on Expat Radio, and I'm talking to EJ Dawson, a writer all the way across the world from Australia. So hello again, EJ.
Good morning and evening to you, respectively.
It's confusing, isn't it? But we've got rid of the spiders now, and we're going to talk a little bit about your website, and I think it's a fantastic resource for anybody who is an aspiring writer, because it can be a very lonely life as a writer, even when you've been published. You know, you're often sat there on your own, and your website has got some fantastic articles. I particularly like the one where a friend of yours wrote you a letter, and now you're encouraging your own readers to write letters. So just explain a little bit about that one.
So that came up as a NaNoWriMo project, which is National Novel Writing Month in November. You're challenged to write 50,000 words, and my friend decided that she was going to write letters to all these people that she knew, including people she didn't like and people she loved, and she decided to write me a letter, and I found this very flattering, but I was very moved at some of the things that I didn't know about how much I encouraged her to write, and I didn't ever think of myself in that sort of context, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to share this, because writing is a very lonely journey, and with social media we kind of have access to a lot more resources, but we're also effectively still sitting by ourselves behind a computer. And I think it's nice to know that if you're helping someone write, if you're helping anyone in their creative journey, that you tell them, hey, I really appreciate what it is you're doing. And it's prompted several letters from myself as well, to sort of tell other, including a return letter to this young girl who I just think is amazing. And I think it's really important to let people know when you appreciate, regardless if it's through your creative journey or not, that you appreciate them in your life, because sometimes you don't know.
I think it is inspirational, because it's very personal, and it does confirm that they're not alone, and they are going along in the right direction. And there was another one, which again, authors can often sit there and sort of refresh on Amazon all day long, looking for that elusive review, and that's the subject of another interview with a Mrs. Y.
Yep, so Mrs. Y, and all the details are on my website, ejdawson.com, but Mrs. Y is a writer, but more predominantly she's a reviewer, and she spends an awful, I can't even imagine how many reviews she does, but between the two of us, I also review books on my website, and I make a point of reviewing both traditionally published and indie published books, as does she. And I think it's really helpful because this article talks about how to get reviews, and it's one of the biggest questions writers actually have. How do I get a review? I've just released this book. How do I get a review? And just like every part of the publishing process, whether you're traditional or self, it takes a lot of background work that never ever really sees the light of day in order to get it. And there's often ways you can end up actually breaking Amazon's rules if you don't really realize it, because there's so much misinformation out there.
And I think when I look through the first page of your website, there is so much there that it's not about you. This is about helping the writing community, and it's such a generous thing to do, because writers all have similar experiences, and if they just get that little bit of help, it can be a massive boost to them. You've even got a section on how to help writers. What would your top 3 tips be to an independent author?
I think the first thing is write a lot, and I think that's severely underestimated. I'm actually having a blog post done through an author's website, which you'll be able to find on my Twitter page on the 7th of April, about how in order to be a self-published author, or even an author these days, some of the advice is release a book every 6 months, which seems a phenomenal short time span in the traditional industry, but self-publishing is essential, which requires a lot of hard work. I think the second thing is be prepared to take criticism well. One of the first things about, and I do a lot of beta reading for authors, and I offer it through my Twitter page. I often run competitions for beta reading to give feedback. And one of the things that I find is a lot of writers, they've just written their first book, and they want to protect it. But by the same token, if you want readers to read it, you need to be aware that there's inherent flaws. I have them. Every writer has them, and you need to be open to that criticism. And the third thing is to never ever give up. I mean, if you go back and you look at the first novella I ever wrote compared to Behind the Veil, you wouldn't believe they were written by the same person. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this for over 5 years now. I've been a writer my whole life, but doing this properly and making it more than a hobby has become everything to me, and it absolutely makes a difference that you keep trying and you keep writing and you keep improving yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not just about writing a book for someone to read. It's about being able to express yourself creatively and satisfy a part of yourself that allows you to feel content and happy inside.
And there's another piece on your website which just shows what can be achieved if you put your mind to it. You wrote a book in just 25 days. That must have taken a huge amount of discipline.
I have to confess that was quite challenging. NaNoWriMo, I mentioned before, is a novel in a month, so that's the 30-odd days. But this one was, I normally take time off to do that. I normally take a couple of weeks. So this was much more intense because I was actually working and socialising and doing everything else. So every time I was at home, I just wrote. I just sat at the computer and I wrote, even though I was tired or angry or whatever it happened to be. And part of that was because I just acknowledged I'd had to put the last prophecy on hiatus. But the other part was that this Behind the Veil, I may as well have been possessed by a ghost, which is great because that's what it's about. Sitting down writing it, I just had to write it. I woke up thinking about it. I went to bed wondering if I'd done enough or got that scene right. And I'm really pleased at it didn't feel like I was putting pressure on myself, because every time I wrote it, I was excited about what was going to be happening next. And it feels like every single part of it is just one gripping detail after another. And I'm a much more subtle writer, so the ways that these come through in this sort of gothic noir are really intriguing, and I'm really excited by all the feedback I'm currently get from my initial beta wave.
Changing tack now. You mentioned earlier you had some spiders in your house, but you've also got cats and a python. How do they get along?
I have quite a menagerie here. We have 2 dogs, 2 cats, the pet snake, and about 8 goldfish. So they all get along quite well. It's an interesting household, but me and my husband have a lot of love to give all our furry babies. They're all rescues, which is lovely. One of our dogs is a special needs dog, and the python, to be perfectly honest, just normally sits in her tank perfectly happy.
Not crawling all over your keyboard like the cats probably do.
Oh, we lock the cats out when we get the python out. There's certainly not mixed company, but the cats and dogs get along quite well. The dog has been known to actually clean the cat, which is a bit weird, but anyway.
Community spirit, I guess. But we're running a little short of time now, so in the minute or so we've got left, just tell the listeners where they can find out a little bit more about you and your books, and don't forget to mention that website.
So The website is just ejdawson.com. You'll predominantly find me on Twitter at EJ Dawson Author. You'll also find through my website my Facebook links, though I am predominantly on Twitter. And feel free to contact me there, send a message. I'm always open to talking to both writers and readers about their journey and what I can do to help.
Well, you've got a lot coming up this year, so hopefully you'll come back on the show and tell us how it's all progressing.
I'd love to. That would be wonderful.
Oh, well, we certainly wouldn't want to miss any of your upcoming releases, so we're going to play out with Darren Hayes and I Miss You. You've been listening to the Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
Baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know, because I'm getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. And you can't tell me where you stayed last night. You just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know when I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. No, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know when I can't make you dance. Well, I'll say goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance.